In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. I want to begin tonight by asking a question that I believe more of us need to sit with, not in a think piece, not in a conference room, but in the quiet and honest chambers of our own hearts. If you've been given the privilege of leading others, whether that means leading a corporation, a congregation, a classroom, a community, or simply your own family, who is leading you? Who is tending to the interior life of the leader? Who is accountable for the well-being of the person everyone else depends on? America has produced some of the most visibly accomplished leaders in history of the world, and yet, in this very moment, we're witnessing a crisis of leadership so profound, so pervasive, so quietly devastating that it demands we call it by its true name. We have built a culture that celebrates the performance of leadership while starving the soul of the leader. And nowhere is that truth more consequential and more urgent than among Black men and women who carry the double weight of navigating unjust systems while serving as beacons of hope for their communities. I want to speak plainly about something tonight that our community has not always had the language or permission to discuss openly: mental health and its relationship to leadership. For too long within the Black community, the expectation has been that strength means silence, that the leader does not break, he simply bends, that the pastor, the executive principal, the patriarch, the community anchor does not have bad days, does not carry wounds, does not need help, does not require rest. We inherited some of that stoicism from ancestors who survived the unsurvivable and had no other option. But survival and thriving are not the same thing. And the cost of confusing the two has been paid in the lives, the health, the relationships, and the unrealized potential of generations of Black leaders who poured from empty cups until there was nothing left to pour. Tonight, we choose a different conversation. Tonight, we choose honesty over performance. Tonight, we choose wholeness over image. And that choice, I want to be clear, is an act of profound courage. Authentic leadership, what it truly means to lead without amputating the parts of yourself that make you human, is perhaps the most underexplored and undervalued concept in our discourse on excellence. We have confused authenticity with vulnerability as weakness, when in fact, the courage to show up as your full, unedited self in positions of influence is among the hardest things a leader can do. It is far easier to wear the armor. It is far easier to perform competence than to practice it from a place of genuine wholeness. Authentic leadership asks you to do the terrifying, necessary, liberating work of knowing who you are, healing what is broken, and then leading from that real and rooted place, not from the person you have constructed to survive the room. That is not soft. That is the hardest work leadership demands. History has always known this, even when the history books did not record it so plainly. Frederick Douglass did not escape slavery and become the century's most eloquent abolitionist by pretending he was not wounded. He became powerful by transforming his wounds into wisdom and wielding that wisdom with ferocity and love. Thurgood Marshall did not dismantle the legal architecture of segregation by checking his humanity at the courthouse door. He carried it with him, let it fuel him, let it keep him honest. John Lewis did not march into the teeth of violence on the Edmund Pettus Bridge by suppressing his fear. He felt it fully, acknowledged it honestly, and chose to walk forward anyway. And in every neighborhood, in every church, in every community that Black America has ever built from rubble, there have always been architects who led not from titles, but from calling, who showed up whole, who served completely, who left the ground richer for their having walked it. Those are the leaders our tradition has always honored most deeply. Tonight, America in Black and White welcomes a man who stands in that tradition, who has spent 15 years in the most demanding corridors of healthcare, who holds a doctorate in corporate leadership, and who has dedicated his life and his platform to helping others lead themselves first. He is a consultant, a keynote speaker, a workshop facilitator, a mental health advocate, a mentor, and by every account, a man who leads with both his mind and his heart fully engaged. His name is Dr. R. Vance Cooper Jr., and the conversation we are about to have is the kind that does not just inform, it transforms. I want you to receive what is about to unfold tonight, not as a broadcast, but as a conversation, one you are invited into fully, whether you are a CEO or a student, a seasoned leader, or someone just beginning to understand the scope of your own potential. What Dr. Cooper has to say belongs to you. It was forged in the fires of real experience, refined by genuine scholarship, and offered by the kind of compassion that only comes from a person who has seen human beings at their most vulnerable and chosen again and again to believe in their capacity to rise. So lean in, open up, and let us begin, and let's welcome Dr. Cooper to the show. Hello, sir.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the warm welcome as well.
Yes, sir. Is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we get into the show?
Well, to the audience, just thank you very much for tuning in, and hopefully that something that there's something that you can take from this conversation that you can add, or that will add to your life and add to what you have going on, or maybe challenge some thoughts that you might have had. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I want to thank each and every individual that's tuned in right now at this time. And for those that will be tuning in, especially the people that are here with us each and every day. So Dr. Cooper, the way I like to start all the shows is I like to give the audience the opportunity to learn a little bit about the guest before we lean in with all the pertinent information, the things that you're doing, and some things that they can learn. And I like to start this one out with what I call your roots, identity, and your life story. When you think back to where you began, the home you grew up in, the neighborhood you came from, the earliest version of yourself, What is the one image or memory that you believe tells the truest story of who you were always meant to become?
Well, for me, I think that I've always been kind of a shy, reserved person. And one of the things that I had to learn about myself was that through my shyness and through my reservedness, that there are moments where it's okay to be like that naturally and to have that natural wiring. But I think that what something that emerged in me was the just really recognizing the importance of when you're supposed to speak up, when you're supposed to stand out, when you're supposed to be defending yourself, rather than when you're not supposed to be letting things slide. So those are the types of things that I really had to learn about myself and really recognize when those various situations when I was when to kind of lean into that. But naturally, I'm a very reserved, private. I'm not really a person who is looking for a lot of controversy. Don't want to really rock the boat too much, like in my natural sense. But again, I just recognize that, especially when it comes to speaking out about what's right, speaking on, and especially demonstrating good character. I just recognize that there are various situations where you really do have to, you can rock the boat, as I'll say.
So, your father, R. Vance Cooper Sr., is one of the most influential people in your life. In what specific moments, not grand gestures, but quiet, ordinary moments, did you first begin to understand the depth of what he was building in you?
Well, I think that I get my quietness and my reserved demeanor from my dad, actually, because he was not a person who was really complaining. He was just a person who is, if it had to be get done, it had to get done. He wasn't complaining. He wasn't blaming people. He wasn't pointing the finger. If it was something that needed to get done, he would always play his part in terms of making sure that something gets done. So that's something that very much has it has been implanted into myself as well, where I'm not a big complainer. I'm not a person. I'm a problem. I'm a person who's looking for solutions. So if there's a problem that arises, I'm not we could talk about the problem. There's no problem. We do need to have a space for that, but it's almost like immediately I'm looking. What can we do to solve this? What can we do to change this? And what part can I play in making this better or fixing this issue, even if it isn't my fault? So just me being able to be a person that's able to not complain and just be very solution oriented. That's very much something that I got from my father.
Okay. So, what values did your father instill in you that now you realize were actually his most enduring form of leadership development? That is, the lessons that had nothing to do with corporate strategy, but everything to do with who you are as a man.
Well, I think that the one of the most important things that he, even when before I even really thought about what he was doing, was just demonstrating good character, just being a person that very trustworthy, honest person, a person who doesn't compromise on their values. For there's lots of things that people do to compromise their values, whether it's for money, whether it's for the things that you can get or an opportunity. Just recognizing that it's very important to be able to stay true to who you are and stick to your value system, because the minute that people are challenging your like what people are basically when people are in a position where they can question your character, character is one of those things that once you lose the trust of people, it's very, very difficult for you to get that back. And so just being a person that's able to stay true to their values, being a person that's not willing to compromise based on something that I don't believe in. If it's something that I see maybe other people are leaning into, and it's something that doesn't align with my value system, being able to just graciously step away or remove myself from the situation. that's something that is very important to me. And I think that that's actually one of the most important aspects of leadership is just people being able to trust you. And if you're saying like, are you being actually who you are? Are you sticking to your word? If things change, are you a person who's blaming people, or are you a person who is trying to come up with solutions and coming up with ways for people to collaborate to be able to solve problems? So I think that character is definitely one of those big things that I got from him that really always in the back of my mind. I'm just trying to make sure that everything that I do, whether it's an opportunity, whether I'm speaking, whether I'm teaching, whether I'm consulting, I always try to make sure that I'm demonstrating good character, because once you once people are questioning your character, it's very difficult for you to be able to gain that trust back.
So, growing up as a young black man, how did you reconcile the world's assumptions about who you were with the truth of who you knew yourself to be? And what or who helped you hold on to that truth when the pressure to conform was greatest?
Well, I attribute that. I actually will attribute a lot of that to my mother. My mother was someone who so my parents worked very hard to get me into good schools and help me have good opportunities. But one of the best things that my mother did for me was she I had an opportunity. It was a program called the Dessert Club. And basically, what that program was, it was a 2-year program where you attended meetings, you had various lessons on Black history and African history. We went on field trips, did fundraisers, and at the end of the 2 years, the grand award was a trip to Africa. So that was something I did from sixth grade. It was like sixth grade to like eighth grade, because we actually went to Egypt that summer before I went into ninth grade. But through that program, that's where I was really able to learn a lot of information about, quite frankly, things that weren't taught in school, information that is basically being kept from people. And so that's where I learned a lot of the information like that. Off the top of my head, I can think of that's where, like, of course, Juneteenth just became a national holiday. What was it, maybe 2 or 3 years ago? And a lot of people, a lot who look just like me and you, for that was really kind of their first time learning what Juneteenth was. Or many people I noticed who were my peers, or even people who were older than me, they had never even heard of what that was. And what I can say is that I've known it my whole life, but I've known it more. I've known about where it came from and the history behind it. I've known it for longer than I haven't known it, because it was something that I learned when I was, sixth, seventh grade as a middle school student, learning about, the Juneteenth in Galveston, Texas, and learning about what the celebration was all about. Like, I had never heard of it up until that point. So it's actually something that I've been observing on a annual basis ever since that point, ever since me learning about it. And then actually, so I'm in Philly, so we actually have there's actually a lot of Juneteenth celebrations that have been occurring over the course of over the years, even prior to it becoming a national holiday. So that's just an example of something that I learned in that program that, quite frankly, it's not something you learn in schools, and then also it's not information that basically has been given to us. So again, that program really it did pay dividends for me, just being able to recognize that, prior to us Black and brown people arriving at this land, we didn't come to this land enslaved. We came to this land as we were kings and queens, and we had all these different things that were positive influence. We were people of influence, and all of that was stolen from us. So just being able to learn about the information that was stolen from us, and really being able to recognize our true roots, that was something that was very important to me, and something that I was able to embrace. Because in school, a lot of times, at least I can't speak to really necessarily what they're teaching the history now in schools, but I know when I was in school, Black history started at slavery. And
Mhm.
it was something, it was very eye-opening. I'm glad that I got that experience early on, just being able to recognize, like, no. This story doesn't start with slavery. Like there was something that happened before that. It's like maybe the story in America starts with slavery, but even with that, just learning about there everybody that was Black wasn't enslaved during that time. Like they were definitely people who were free, like free Black men and women that were doing lots of things that were having an influence, despite all the racism, despite all the things that were stacked against them. So just being able to learn that information early on, that really helped me recognize that. I just think it's very important for us to recognize that our story in America does not start with slavery. That's something that was very important and ingrained in me at a young age.
So, as you think about that, from young you up to the leader that you are today, from that learned experience from then, what impact has that had on you and how you lead today as a leader?
Well, for me, I work with a diverse clientele, all different types of organizations that I'm in. You're meeting all different types of people, American people who've immigrated here, Black, white, brown, you name it. I've worked with them, and so one of the things that I recognize is that I want to show up. I don't want to compromise who I am when I step into these spaces. And so me as a Black man, especially a Black educated man, I recognize that I have a responsibility to contribute to the betterment of us as a people. And so if that looks like me not judging people, just kind of having a conversation with somebody when I see somebody doing something wrong, calling out something that may be a negative stereotype or something ignorant that's being said, calling that out or correcting it with maybe it could be we in a land of you could just put out any type of conspiracy, you could upload it to YouTube, things that aren't researched, things that aren't fact checked. So I always like taking on that responsibility of just making sure that if there's a way for me to be able to help educate somebody or be able to uplift and inspire someone, that's what I want to be. I don't want to be a person that's putting people down, that is disparaging people, that's making fun of people. We all have flaws. Nobody knows everything, but I seek to be a person that is uplifting our people rather than putting them down. And at the same time, I think that one of the things that sometimes as Black people in this country, I think sometimes when you're trying to hold other Black people accountable, sometimes that can be it can be met with trying to use the right word. It could be
Met with
people don't want to
malice.
be. Yes, yeah, that's probably the best way for me to put it. But yes, there's a lot of instances where I think that there are many things that have worked against us in this country, whether it's racism, whether it's all any of the other isms that are still existing in this country today. I do think that it's a little bit nuanced because while that is true, there are systemic racist things that have kept us from advancing as a people, and some things are continuing to do that to us today. I do think that accountability is also something that comes into play because there are things that we as people can do in terms of being responsible and taking action within our means and controlling the things that we can control so that our situations can become better. And then also just making sure that the various stereotypes that people may share about us, whether it's Black people sharing the stereotypes or non-Black people sharing the stereotypes, making sure that we're recognizing, like, one of the things that I hear a lot of people saying is that Black people are not a monolith. And so just recognizing that we are everybody's different, we all have a lot of things to add, and we all have the potential to be people, to be persons of value, and we have a unique gift to be able to share with the world. And so my gift is really being able to speak life into people. And so again, me, I always, I want to speak life into everyone, but I'm especially inspired and passionate about speaking life into Black people, particularly because there are a lot of things that work against us. And I just want to make sure that I'm doing my part to ensure that the next generation of young Black males, men and women that are coming behind me, making sure that they're recognizing their unique gifts, their talents, and despite all the things that may be working against them over the course of their life, there are ways that we are able to overcome, and there are things that we are able to accomplish despite everything working against us.
So let me ask you this, because I mean, that was definitely, you gave us the whole entire gambit. But I want to ask you a little bit more of an in-depth question here when it comes to that. When you think about culture and you as a leader, how are you able to stay within your cultural perspectives while working with this diverse group of people? How do you do that?
I just think that it's just recognizing who you are and sticking to your values. Like, you really have to. I mean, I'm might be a little lighter than other people, but I'm still Black. I'm still a Black person in America. So there's just certain things that come with that. It, there's just certain experiences that you're going to have in America that are not necessarily. Some are going to be unique to me, but some aren't unique to me. There's shared experiences that everyone can have, and so just being able to recognize that, again, I think it all comes down to character and staying true to who you are. Because even if you are in a situation where somebody doesn't like you, or and it's, for whatever reason, whether it's because of who you are, whether it's because of the color of your skin, your values are going to keep you anchored and going to keep you from really getting out of character and ultimately doing something, because it takes a split second, 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds, really, for you to lose everything that you've worked hard for, everything that you earned. And so just making sure that, again, it's just recognizing who you are and recognizing that your character is going to be one of the most important things for you to stay anchored to, because it's going to be the foundation of your leadership. So I just think that that's something that's really, I think that's really what helps me continue to persevere and continue to just operate in a manner that I operate in. And I will add that I didn't always think this way, and I wasn't always behaving this way. I think that it's just the more. I think that one of the things that really helped me recognize who I am and be able to embrace it was really focusing on my mindset and focusing on my natural wiring. Because the more you learn about yourself, the more you're able to see what you have similar or what you have in common with other people, and what you do differently from other people. And I always like to talk about how everybody has differing perspectives. We might have different perspectives about the same subject, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong, and it doesn't mean I'm wrong. It just means there's a difference in perspective. Now, there are situations where your perspective can be wrong, and a lot of times they aren't. It isn't. So it's making sure that we're just having an appreciation for. That's something I definitely strive to do, is have an appreciation, even if I disagree with someone, recognizing and having an appreciation for the perspective, because we don't always think the same way. We're not always wired the same way, and we're not always going to be looking at issues in the same manner.
So, at what point in your life did you first feel the pull towards healthcare and towards leadership? And were those two callings separate at the time, or did they always feel like two faces of the same purpose?
No, that's actually a good question that I've never been asked before. So, to answer your question, both of them were separate. So, what initially drew me to healthcare, so I'm going to take it back to high school, where my entire, really all 4 years of high school, I thought I was going to be a medical doctor. Like that, I was dead set on being a medical doctor to the point where rest in peace to my guy, Dr. Melvin Jackson. He was a primary care physician in Philadelphia, one of my dad's good friends. What I would do is every summer he would invite me to spend time in his office, and then he would allow me to basically see his face, like of course with their consent. I would be in the office with him with patients. He introduced me to various, and the thing I appreciated most about him was he introduced me to a lot of Black doctors that were in the area. So cardiologists, primary care doctors, nephrologists, GI doctors, some of these specialties that he introduced me to, like I had never even, I'm a high school student, so I didn't know what a GI or gastroenterologist was at that point in time. I didn't know what a colonoscopy was. But just that, me sitting in his office, getting that shadowing experience, it exposed me to all these different specialties. Now, once I went to college, so I started off college as a biology major. Once I got to college, it was 2 years into it. I just really, like, I was a big science person in high school. And then ultimately, I just recognized I had to have a chat with myself and just really, I think college really helped me recognize that I wasn't as interested in a science career as I thought I was. Of course, once you start getting into these advanced classes, and it wasn't even the fact that I was doing bad in these classes, like I was doing pretty well in most of the classes, but it just, I really didn't have the desire to go through all the science in order that was going to be required of me in order for me to be a medical doctor. So that's ultimately when I pivoted. And then I had an experience. This was going into I want to say it was the winter break of my senior year. I had an opportunity. One of my good friends from church, Craig, so he was working down at the University of Pennsylvania in their emergency room office, in the back office. So they were at the time, they were getting ready for their JCO inspections. And then he basically had a temporary position that was open for me to work during my time when I was home. And so he basically, I ended up getting that job, started working in the University of Pennsylvania's in their ER. And they have this whole big back office that's right behind the emergency room. And that was the first time that it opened the possibilities up to me that were, because when you think of healthcare, the first thing you're thinking, or at least the first thing I was thinking, was always clinical. So, therapy, like respiratory therapists, doctor, nurses. So that opportunity really opened my eyes up to the whole world of health administration, where you have these people that are working behind the scenes in these administrative offices and finance offices that are making the world of healthcare go. And without healthcare administration, it doesn't matter what the clinicians are doing, because you have to have the administrative work is just as important as the medical and the clinical work. And so that was actually the first job that I had that really got me interested, where I was like, I want to be a part of this. Because after I decided I didn't want to be a medical doctor, I was just trying to figure out, what can I do that is along the lines of healthcare, but that's not necessarily, doesn't require me going to medical school, doesn't require me pivoting and trying to go to nursing school. And so that was really the first time that I had ever had a role like in healthcare administration. Now, the leadership portion that came a little later, once I was already into my career. and you're just open. I'm having different roles, and one of the things that I recognized was that even though I was doing pretty good, I was happy with where I was. I just felt like there was this pull on me to be able to do more. It's like, Vance, you can do more than this. And so that's when I really started focusing on what I could do to improve myself as a leader. And so me improving myself as a leader, that's really kind of what catapulted me into pursuing doctoral studies in leadership, because I wanted to learn a lot about various leadership I was very interested in various leadership styles and leadership characteristics, and then just leadership perspectives. And so, going through my PhD program, I was able to really be able to study all of that. And so, simultaneously, while studying leadership, that's when I was really able to embrace who I was called to be as a leader. Because I think that prior to me really studying leadership, I wasn't really too sure about what I could do to be a leader. Because it was like, even though I had what I'll say, I'll quote unquote leadership roles, I really wasn't seeing myself as a leader. And one of the biggest things that I didn't necessarily learn it in my program, but I learned it as a result of my program, was that leadership is really a self-discovery process. It's really about looking inward at the various qualities and really being able to recognize your gifts and your unique talents and what you can do and how you can apply them to influence and inspire other people, and really ultimately serving other people. Because that's the other thing about leadership, is about serving people, not serving myself, not serving the title. It's about serving people. And so those are things that, even though it's not necessarily something that you're studying, like in terms of the theories and stuff per se, that self-discovery process, that is something that you can't learn self-discovery from a book or from somebody teaching it. It can't be taught. It's something that it's something within yourself that's sparked, and it comes out of you. And then once it comes out of you, you can't see any other way differently. And if you do see something differently, at that point, you're choosing not to embrace it versus it not being something that you're aware of.
That's really, really interesting, because it seems like, with you having that experience there from the medical profession, as well as what you actually got in that discovery from leadership, that it seems like they go hand in hand, because apparently you're able to make them connect in a mutually exclusive way that's very, very positive. Do you find that to be like a really hard thing, where it's very much detailed and meticulous, that it's time consuming? Or is it one of those things that you're able to patch whatever you're doing together and make it stick, because this is what it's going to be?
Yeah, I think it was pretty easy for me to do it, especially since I've been working in mental health for the last 10 years now. And so, especially with me working in the mental health space, it's really been very easy for me, because so of course I'm on the inpatient side of mental health. So when people are coming in for inpatient, that means that in most of these cases, you're coming in, some voluntarily, some of them are coming in involuntarily, but at that point you have some sort of an acute psychiatric issue that you're dealing with that needs immediate intervention once you're coming on the inpatient side. So I review all the criteria, making sure that the patients are meeting criteria for inpatient, dealing with the insurances and everything. And so one of the things that I recognize is that whenever I am reviewing some information about a patient and just kind of looking at the various scenarios that led up to the patient coming to that point, quite often, and quite frankly, I was seeing it when I was working in skilled nursing as well. Quite often, people get burnt out, depressed as a result of them taking care of other people. Like, I've seen it time and time again. I'll give you a perfect example. I can remember when I was in a nursing facility working. It was a gentleman. He had come in for he had come into the facility because he had just had a heart attack. Or, no, he had a stroke. And so I'm talking to him. He had just got out of the hospital, was coming to the facility for rehab, and I'm just talking to him, and he's telling me he's like, man, I'm so worried. And I'm like, well, what happened? He's like, it's my wife. I was taking care of my wife, and that's what because his wife had dementia. He was trying to keep her at home, and he's telling me about how he had been so worried about taking care of his wife that he had been neglecting his own health to the point where he had a stroke. I see it on the inpatient side where I see people they're literally getting to the point where they're either having suicidal thoughts or actual suicide attempts because of the burnout that they face in taking care of a loved one, whether that loved one had physical challenges or sometimes dealing with mental health challenges themselves. And one of the things that I recognize is that, and one of the things that I always tell people is that you are no good to anybody else unless you take care of yourself. You can't be. You have to. You have to treat yourself the like you got to treat yourself the best. It's like I try not to use the word selfish, but in a sense, you do have to be selfish about your own well-being because you're not going to be good to anyone else if you're not well. And so I think that leadership, and I think that that's really where I was able to combine leadership with mental health was because you part of you taking care of yourself is leading yourself. So you have to lead yourself first. One of my coaches that I've done training and work with always says that you should be your first. If you're going to be a leader, you should be your first client, and that goes back to that self-discovery process. You have to. The more you learn about yourself, the more you learn about what you're capable of doing, what you're not capable of doing, areas of improvement, areas where you need to be delegating things. So, and self-discovery is an ongoing process. It's not something that you can just do one time and then it's like, oh, I got it. It's a you need to the most successful and effective people, they take a continuous inventory on where they are in life. But again, it goes back to self-discovery. Self-discovery is it's an ongoing process. It's not something that you just do a single time and then you're done with it. You should be checking in with yourself on a schedule, whether it's checking in daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. I mean, I recommend you do all of them because it's really what your check-in, your day-to-day check-in is going to look differently from your week-to-week check-in. Your week-to-week check-in is going to look differently from your monthly and your annual check-in. So you want to make sure that you're constantly self-assessing and going through, because the more you self-assess and assess yourself, the more you're able to be in a position to recognize your unique talents, places that maybe there are areas of improvement, and ways for you to ultimately serve others and serve the people, to connect with the people that you're supposed to be connecting with.
Let's talk a little bit about your leadership development work. When someone asks you to define authentic leadership, what do you say, and how has that definition evolved from the version you would have offered at the beginning of your career to the one you carry now?
Well, I just think authentic leadership is it's being true to yourself, being true to your unique talents, your unique gifts. And I think that in order for you to be an authentic leader, I'll go back to self-assessment. You have to know you have to constantly examine where you are, and you have to know yourself better than anyone else knows you. Because when you're constantly self-assessing and when you're constantly going through that self-inventory process, that's where you're able to really recognize what your authentic talents are. A lot of times we get, especially in the world of social media, we get caught up in chasing other people's success. We see somebody succeeding at a thing, we'll say, and then we think if we do that thing, that we're going to have success. When it's like, no, 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 no. That's not the way this success works. Success is doing what is authentic to you. So if it's something that, like, now you might see somebody doing something and having success with it, and you might be, if it's within your unique talents and your unique gifts, you might be inspired to do the same thing, and that's perfectly fine. But people, I think that sometimes when it comes to success, people don't realize that one of the things that people have to recognize is that success is personal. And so in order for you to be an authentic leader, you have to really lean into what success is for you. So success is for you for to go to med school. Success to you is to be an educator. You have to really lean into lean into your unique talents and your unique gifts in order for you to be a truly authentic leader.
So, of all the dimensions of human development you could have chosen to study at the doctoral level, what drew you to the intersection of organizational structures and individual leadership capacity? Why corporate leadership specifically?
That's a good question. So for me, corporate leadership, I chose corporate leadership to study. And what drew me to it was because, so a lot of people will get into these very specific fields like, African American literature or physics, chemistry. Whereas I think that when you think of leadership, leadership is a very broad, like it's very broad. And so I think that the broadness of it is actually what attracted me to it. Because when you think about leadership, leadership is in every single aspect of our lives. So even though it's my PhD is in corporate leadership specifically, but there's a lot of overlap in leadership just in general, where it transfers from whether you're a church leader, whether you're a community leader, leader of your family, or leader in industry. So I think that the intersection of the overlap of leadership as it is in as it kind of can as it overlaps in our lives in various and kind of shows up in various different ways. I think that that's really honestly what really attracted me to studying leadership. And then just also just an appreciation and a recognition of the various styles. We see their various styles of leadership. There's no right or wrong style of leadership. Everybody, because I think that your style also goes back to the previous question about authentic leadership. Some people they do a lot of hooting and hollering, and then you have some people that are very reserved, and they might not be doing a lot of hollering and stuff. That doesn't mean that they're a bad leader either way. It's just a matter of difference in style. Because if you hooping and hollering, especially if it's in a respectful, direct way, you doing that, if you're effective, then it's like, what are we really talking about? Like, I'm not going to criticize somebody who, especially if you're doing it in a respectful way. Now, if you're hooping and hollering and you're being disrespectful or, or you know, offending people and things of that nature, especially when it's like intentionally being disrespectful or disparaging towards others, I think that's a different thing. But I think that just having an appreciation for the various styles, different traits, different various characteristics, I think that studying that is what really drew me to studying that broad topic of leadership. And then again, it's just leadership is transferable in just about every industry, every aspect of our lives. So, and that broadness is really what drew me to studying it at the doctoral level.
As you mentioned that, and yeah, I understand leadership is very, very broad because that could be anything. But when we think about, as I was asking specifically about, why did you choose corporate leadership? Can you tell me when you delved and when you decided that you wanted to learn more and be more of a corporate leader, what was the purpose of that? Was it like for the cultural perspective? Was it more of the knowledge purpose? Was it more of just getting the understanding of building your own ecosystem? What was that actual purpose?
I think the purpose of it was really for myself, but it really was, I really wanted to be a person that was able to break, because when you're doing doctoral work, you're reading all these journals, you're reading dissertations and things of that nature, where the average person isn't going through scholarly journals. The average person has never read a dissertation in their entire life. And so being able to go through the rigors of being able to research and reading and the various perspectives and all the various things that I was able to do over the course of researching, I think that's what really got me that's what really got me really intrigued and really made me want to be a person that was being able to break these complex. I don't believe that. I always cringe when I see people who have PhDs just only holding conversations with other people who have PhDs, because it's like, what are you learning all this knowledge for? What are you doing all this research for if you're not going to be able to articulate or communicate these advanced studies and these complex themes, if you're not going to be able to communicate that to the average person? So I believe that me being able to, I did all this work, did all this studying, so I could be able to break these complex these problems or these complex themes. I really wanted to be able to break them down and be able to articulate them to the masses. So that's really something that is very, very important to me.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that. That's really awesome. And let me just say this, because there are a lot of people, just as you mentioned, that are on that level, that PhD level, that have the thought process. Now, I've heard many different things, and I want you to help us to understand this. Is that many say that, you never want to be the smartest person in the room. And for a lot of those, it's like, I only want to talk to people that are here. And so with you wanting to say, no, it's not just here, it's top down. That's a very interesting perspective. Can you tell me what drew you to that perspective, and why is that so important?
I just think that it just comes big again. It's about who do you want to influence? Do you want to influence a bunch of people who have PhDs, which two maybe 2% of people will ever go to get a doctorate? Do you want to only have? Do you want that to be your sphere of influence, or do you want to influence the 98%? And so I think that that's really the question. Now, don't get me wrong. There are definitely spaces where I do think that there a little elitism is okay. I do think that I do think that it's a little bit is okay, especially in spaces where you when you have done the work and you're demonstrating that you're an expert. I think that one thing that we see that there's this attack on intellectualism, where you have these people who can just, we're in a world where there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's great that people are able to just pick up a microphone and hit record and being able to get their thoughts off. But that's also a slippery slope, because what happens is you have people who have no work, they have no scholarly work, no scholarly contributions, no actual research besides going down a YouTube rabbit hole, that are trying to tell trained experts what is and what isn't. And so I do think that it's important for us to recognize that the people who do have doctorates and who are fortunate enough to go through that academic rigor, I do think that it's important. I think that it's more important for you to be able to educate others and being able, again, breaking down these complex topics. I think that that's more important than you being the being in a room full of smart people. Because if you're in a room full of smart people, you're not going to be able to, again, you're not going to be able to have an influence on the macro, which is ultimately you want your work, whether you're a researcher, whether you're a panelist, whether you're a writer with all these publications, you want that stuff to be you want to be able to communicate that, and you want to be able to share that with people who do not have the knowledge base that you have. And I think that's more of a mindset thing, because I think that if you're thinking from a perspective of making sure that you want to influence people who maybe don't have the knowledge base and and educating people who might not have that knowledge base, I think that that makes it whereas you don't really get too caught up in the elitism of everything. Because again, for me, yes, I'm not going to correct anybody from calling me Dr. Cooper, but I was Vance before I was ever Dr. Cooper. So I'm always going to be Vance first before Dr. Vance Cooper. And so I think that it's very important. It's very important for us to not get too caught up in these titles, because a title is just a title. I know plenty of people who, well, I won't say plenty, but I've met many people who are doctors and they're quite frankly idiots. And so being a doctor alone or having a doctor alone doesn't necessarily even make you better than the next person. And you shouldn't let that title make you. Because again, there's always somebody that's going to people. First of all, people are watching you, and then second of all, it goes back to character. Are you going to be a person who's seeking to educate, or are you going to be disparaging people because they don't have certain knowledge bases? And so it's just really it's just this is just authentically who I am. Like it really is authentically who I am, and I just try to stay true to my values, and I try to just not come off like I'm better than somebody just because I have a PhD. But there are times where, like I said, if you're on the internet, not you're just talking about something that you saw, you're creating a YouTube video about something you heard somebody else say on YouTube, and you haven't done any actual research, you haven't read any articles, you haven't done any studying on it. It comes down to like making sure that you're educating the next person, but at the same time, you want to do it in a respectful manner and making sure that people aren't feeling discouraged or feeling down because they don't have the knowledge base that you have.
So, in your experience, what do most leadership development programs fundamentally get wrong, and what is the cost of that error? Not just for the individual leader, but for the people they are responsible for.
I would say that I think that probably the leaders that tend to have the most problems are people that are more of transactional versus transformational. So if you give me this or you do me this favor, I owe you, I'll do this favor. I think that when there's nothing wrong with having that transactional base, because I do think that that's something that's important. But when that is the root and the way you run your leadership, you're going to get yourself in trouble. Like you're going to find yourself in trouble because you're going to end up either it's going to cost you something. You're going to end up compromising your values on something, or you're going to be able to you might end up writing a cash that you can't write a check that you can't cash as well. So I think that anybody that is encouraging someone to lead from a more transactional perspective, I think that that's very dangerous. Now, if you are a leadership program or consultant and you're focusing on your primary focus is on transformation, I think
Mhm.
that is the beginnings of what doesn't mean that the program is going to be good, but I think that is the nature of or a quality of what I would say is a good leadership development program. You always want to double down more on a transformation because again, the leadership is about serving the people. If you're not inspiring the people based on that vision, based on your character, based on your attitude, if you're not inspiring people, you're venturing to the point where you're manipulating people. And so I think that when you focus on that transaction versus instead of the transformation, transactional leadership, you're more capable and, and it's a lot easier to be able to manipulate people to get what you want because of that transaction, that give and take. So you always want to make sure your main focus in leadership is on that transformation.
Wow. You know, you said a lot there, and I want you to see that's a key point that I hope if people are taking notes, that's something to take note of. That's very much so well notable. Let's talk about a little bit about your mental health advocacy. After more than a decade working inside healthcare systems, what was the specific experience or realization that moved mental health advocacy from something you were professionally aware of to something you felt personally called to champion?
Oh well, that's kind of easy for me, especially working on the inpatient side. They're quite frankly, a lot of our black and brown folks they avoid therapy, they're avoiding mental health. And one of the things that I had to recognize working in the space is that your mental health is arguably, I'll say it's more important, but if we don't want to say it's more important, it's just as important as your physical health. Because when your mental health is off, it has a way of being able to trigger your nervous system in a negative way. People sometimes that you have I've seen people have physical aches because of anxiety or because of stress. Like I can remember in my I was probably I might probably about 25 or so. I can remember where this was like right after I had finished grad school or in the middle of grad school. I'm looking for a job. We're kind of coming right out of a recession back when this is probably like 2012, 2013 or so, and I can remember my stomach was just starting to hurt. Like it just was. I could not figure out what it was. And oh, I'm eat. I didn't feel like anything bad was happening, but it's just like this stomach thing was happening. And then so it got so bad that I ended up going to the GI doctor myself to the point where I had colonoscopy and everything, colonoscopy, endoscopy, just to see if there was anything going on in my stomach. Everything came back normal, and then the doctor said, "Hmm, so everything is normal. Like, talk to me about what's going on in your life." And then when I was talking about struggles with finding like a job in my career and things of that nature, they were like, "Oh, I know why we didn't find anything. This is stress." They're like, "I really think it's stress." So it's like stress had me going to the doctors. I'm getting scoped at 20. They don't even do those for people that are 25. Like they rarely do them before you turn 40. And so I'm going through all that and then just recognizing that it's just stress in my body. Stress it's causing stomach challenges and things. And then once I was able to really opened my mind, at least on a personal level, about the effects that stress can have on your physical health. And so ever since that point, I made it a point. It's not that I don't have challenging times, it's not that I don't have stressful times, but one thing about me is that I am not going to worry. Like I just made up my mind. It's like even if I don't know how things are going to how I'm going to accomplish a thing, or if I'm not sure about a situation, Worrying is something that I really try to keep to a minimum because your mental health can really it can if you have bad mental health, it can really affect your physical health in a major way, and they go hand in hand. So it's very important that you take care of your mental health. And so, just me recognizing that as a black man, recognizing that there's a stigma on mental health, period, but there's especially a stigma on black people in terms of going and seeking mental health treatment. And in reality, and I mean, of course, people who are people who believe in God and who are faith based, I think that there's also a belief that you can pray yourself out of things as well. Where it's like you prayer is important. I say my prayers every day, but it's like you can pray, and if you need to go to see the therapist, you can go see the therapist. And I think that it's also important for us to recognize that our mental health is key, is because we are all dealing with everybody is dealing with problems. We all have some things that we are dealing with, some things we might be proud of, some things we're not so proud of, some things that are a little bit more difficult than others. And it's just important that for us to recognize, yeah, do I talk to my wife about things? Yeah, absolutely. But there have been various situations that I've dealt with where it's like, I don't want to dump this on family. I will dump this on a therapist, because it's also comes to that too, because you have to recognize that if you're dumping these things on especially if it's a traumatic experience, if you're dumping that on family members, sometimes they don't want to hear about them. They don't want to hear that. And then sometimes, even though they're listening, they really don't know how they can help you. I think that it's important for us to take care of our mental health, because that helps you recognize how you're able to cope with the various things that you're going to be experiencing, and healthy coping mechanisms. So I think that if you don't get anything out of mental health treatment, whether it's therapist or psychiatrist, I think that just the experience and the tools to be able to cope, I think that that's invaluable experience.
So, working in acute inpatient mental health services means being present with people of some of the most intense and painful moments of their lives. What did that work teach you about the human capacity for resilience that you carry with you every time you walk into a leadership development space?
Well, I think that it's just really just recognizing that people are dealing with some real stuff. Like, people are dealing with some real stuff, whether it's traumatic childhood, whether it's some type of abuse, physical or sexual abuse. It could be the loss of a sibling, loss of a parent, loss of a close friend. I just think that it's really important for, I think that a lot of times people have a tendency to avoid it. When something traumatic happens, you just kind of compartmentalize it and you just bury it somewhere in the back of your brain and just try to forget about it. But in reality, in my experience, I've seen people who have compartmentalized things for decades. And then all of a sudden, it could take you 3 decades to reach your breaking point. And then you're having conversation with somebody, you're asking them enough questions, and then all of a sudden they have this epiphany moment, like, Dad, when this happened 30 years ago, I never dealt with it. Like, I never dealt with it. So like that experience was negatively, you're subconsciously, it gets rooted in your subconscious mind, and you're subconsciously going through the world in your relationships, your work experiences, and you're carrying that trauma and you're transferring that trauma to other people, and you don't even recognize it until you reach this breaking point when you just recognize that that trauma that you experienced that shaped your whole belief system in a negative way. And so I think that is really important. Like, for example, my father passed away a couple years ago. My father-in-law, he just passed away in the springtime in April. And so me, of course, I'm helping my wife, holding her hand, going through that process, the grieving process. which is indeed a process. But one of the things that I told her was that don't avoid the pain. You got to go through it. Like you really got to go through it, and you're going to experience all the, the feelings of sadness. You're reflecting happy, anger. You're going to experience all these various feelings through a grieving process, but it's very important that you go through and experience every single thing you need to feel about that. So the same thing is for people who have been going through some sort of childhood trauma or some emotional abuse or, any type of abuse that they've dealt with. The first thing you really have to do is acknowledge that it happened, be honest with yourself, and then you have to go through the pain, not avoid it. You got to go through it. And going through it is something that's easier said than done, because you might, a lot of times I think people avoid going through these the grief or or dealing with these situations because you might be upset about what you discover, and you might not like some of the things that you uncover about yourself or uncover about the situation. But I think that it's a very necessary evil, or actually I won't even say that evil, but it's a necessary thing for you to go through these things, because that's really the key to becoming a better person or whoever you're supposed to become as a result of the experience. We have the ability to be able to use the experiences to make us a better person, or dwell on the experience, and that's going to make us, ultimately it's not going to make us a so good person in the long run. So just making sure that we go through these situations, deal with and process whatever feelings we need to feel. And processing it's an individual, that's something that's individual. For some people, you might process, it might take you 2-3 years to process something. For some people, you might be able to process within a couple weeks or a couple months. So just recognizing that it's important to give ourselves spaces to be able to process the things that happen to us, so that we're able to cope, and ultimately so that we're not able to dwell on that negative thing that happened to us, shaping our entire belief system. Because also the reality is that even though we might have experienced this sad moment or this traumatic moment, in the long run, nobody really is going to care. So it's like the onus is on us to really be able to again go through that self-discovery process, to be able to really recognize what we need to go through to be able to end up the best person possible, and who we were just created to be as a result of that experience on the other side.
The mental health crisis in the Black communities is real, documented, and deeply rooted in historical trauma, system neglect, and cultural stigma. From your vantage point, as someone who has operated inside the system and know what works in transforming the culture surrounding it, what do you believe is the most misunderstood dimension of this crisis?
That's a good question. Um, I think that there's probably a couple of things that are misunderstood, but I think that one of the things that is misunderstood is that it is a process, especially when you're healing from some sort of traumatic event. It's a process. It's not going to be something that you're going to just. It's not some overnight remedy. It's not something that you're going to just be able to throw a pill at and it feels better. It truly is a process. And so it's a matter of you just recognizing whatever that process looks like for you, and then just processing in a healthy way. Because I do think that there's obviously negative ways to be able to process, whether it's, self-medicating, things of that nature. Sometimes people lash out at others. So just really understanding that it truly is a process. It's not, especially when you're dealing with some sort of traumatic event, it's not something that you necessarily want to get over in a day. or get past, or you quite frankly, you might never get over it. Like I could speak to like the me losing my father. That's not something that you get over. Like you don't really get over that. And quite frankly, I don't want to get over it. It's something that I have gotten through. And so I think that is a difference between getting over something and getting through something. Because when you get through something, you're embracing a process. There's just some sort of process you went through to be able to heal, to be able to, it's like, all right, things will never be the same. Things will never be the same as they were. But what does this new path look like? And how am I able to function on this new path in a healthy and productive way? So I think that it's just the fact that you do have to process these things, and that it's not something that's going to happen overnight, especially for traumatic things. I think that that's something that is a big misconception. And I even see it on the inpatient side where a lot of people, of course, people are coming in when they're at their worst. They're either signing themselves in or they're being forced in involuntarily. So even going through that, it's like, yeah, you're here for stabilization, but ultimately the work must be continued after you discharge. Whether you're going to a psychiatrist, whether you're getting your medication from your primary care doctor, whether you're going to ongoing therapy, it's something that it's like, this is just the beginning. This is an ongoing process. And so just recognizing that it's very important for you to be able to process these things in a healthy way, and just recognizing that it takes time. It's a unique, individualized experience, and that it's something that ultimately, once you actually deal with what you have to deal with is in a healthy manner, you're going to be ultimately end up feeling a lot better once you make it to the other side, and recognizing what that if there's a new normal that's called for, you'll be able to embrace that. But I just think that it's very important. Again, it just goes back to you making sure that you're processing in a healthy way and being able to recognize what you need to do to be able to make sure that you're functioning in a healthy manner in the world.
Let's talk a little bit about your mentorship and community engagement. Um, Dr. Melvin Jackson is one of the most influential figures in your life and career. Without telling us everything, because some things are sacred, can you help us understand who he was to you and what he saw in you before you fully saw it in yourself, and how his investment in you changed the direction of your life?
No, Dr. Jackson was my guy. Like that was so we were members of the same church. He was a doctor. He was very influential, like a lot of people well connected in the area, well respected. Probably the only thing that I didn't like about him was the fact that I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, he a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. So we was, of course, my dad was an alpha too. So I remember when I was first pledging for alpha, I can remember he would joke with me and my dad. He like, hey man, listen, if you won't be a captain, he's like, I got you. He's like, just say the word. And so he would always joke about that type of stuff. But he was definitely a jokester, and just a person who he was well respected, even amongst his fraternity brothers, well respected. And I can't remember the exact name of the award, but I know it's like one of the highest awards you can get in Kappa. I can remember his funeral, sanctuary full of Kappas. So he just was a person who knew a lot of people and was a person who was of great influence. And he was one of the people who really he always would tell me, like, even if I didn't become a doctor, he just made sure that me as a youth, he made me he made me believe, he really showed me what was possible. Like even with one of the things that I felt was interesting about him is he didn't actually go straight through to med school. He went to college, then he went to the military, And then after the military is when he became a medical doctor. So he didn't even go to med school until he was in his 30s, which I felt was what I thought was fascinating because to me as a teenager, I'm like, oh, if you don't go to med school when you don't go to med school in your 20s, it's like it's over. But he even inspired me and showing me that it's never too late to be able to go after your dreams. That was something that was definitely instilled in me from Dr. Jackson. Just having those conversations with him about his med school experience and his various experiences in medicine, and just even as a black doctor, uh, invaluable experience, very invaluable. And then also he was somebody who he treated us like my dad's kids, like he treated us like they were his own, like we were his own kids as well. So when I was shadowing, we're going for lunch. I'm meeting all these various people. I'm literally in operating rooms as a result of relationships he had. I'm in operating rooms observing doctors perform surgery and stuff. And I'm talking, I'm a teenager having these experiences. And these are things that are just, even though I ultimately didn't become a doctor, the life experience and just showing me what was possible and also just demonstrating his excellence because even his daughter's a doctor after him, and like son doing well. So just being able to see all these great things that he was able to instill in them, it really inspired me to really want to be like him. And then also even furthermore, it inspires me to anytime I come across somebody that is especially going through any type of doctoral program, I'm always looking to mentor them, always looking to encourage them even though I'm not an academic professional, which is kind of a little bit orthodox for people that get PhDs. Um, I'm always cheering on my colleagues, inspired by my colleagues, but I attribute that all to Dr. Jackson because Dr. Jackson was really one of the first people that I really developed a personal relationship with, who had an advanced degree of that sort, and able to really develop that personal relationship with them. So, a lot of credit for Dr. Jackson. Miss him dearly. That was really my guy.
Well, I want if you could explain this to our audience. What was the impact of being connected to so many profound professionals as a young man as you were going through your life before you decided to go into your PhD program? What was the impact of being connected to that many professionals?
I think it was important for me to be able to see people like me who look like me being able to accomplish these things. Because like for example, my high school was I was fortunate. I went to a high school out here called LaSalle College High School. So I was fortunate enough to get an academic scholarship for all 4 years. Like my parents would have never been able to afford to send me to that school. But me going to that school, of course, I'm meeting. I'm one of when I was a freshman, I was one of four black freshmen out of a class of like 250. So you're me going to a school like that, though I never really had any issues. I think it was important for I'm seeing these kids. Their parents are doctors. These people owning car dealerships. They got a lot of these people come from old money. Quite frankly, like, they got some people who their father, grandfather, all their uncles went to the school. So there's a lot of legacy there as well. And so I think that it was though I saw all that in college or in high school, and like my high school was college prep. So most of the people that went to my high school they already knew the minute they stepped foot in there as ninth graders that they were going to be going to college once they graduated. But I think that it was just important for me to be able to. I think that it was a lot easier for them to be able to see things and believe that it was attainable for them versus even for me. So I think that even though I did have that experience, I think being able to be in the company of people who like black people who were also able to demonstrate success in their own way, I think that was something that really helped cultivate and just instill a belief in myself that if it was attainable for them, that it's also attainable for me. So I think that that was something that's very important.
So, what did being mentored by someone like Dr. Jackson teach you about the actual practice of mentorship? Not the idealized version, but the real, sometimes uncomfortable, always demanding work of walking with someone through their development.
I think that it's just important to for you to you want to be able to extend an olive branch for individuals that are coming behind me. I think that one thing that it's like Dr. Jackson was teaching me. I didn't even really recognize it at the time until I was actually like studying mentorship. Was Dr. Jackson, he instilled qualities and gave me game because he wanted me to do better and be better than he was. So I think that that's something that's important and also and often missing from mentorships. If like you're if that person is a genuine mentor, they should be giving you so much game that you be better than them, you making more money than them, you having more success than them. And I think that he truly wanted that for me. Whereas I think that we see in some situations, I won't call any names or name any specific programs, but we have mentorship programs where people are giving you A through X, and then they give you just enough for you to continue needing them. And I think that if the mentorship is genuine, you should be wanting to give them so much gain that they don't need you, that they do become better than you. And so I think that when that's the thought and that's the intent behind the mentorship, I think that those are the most genuine mentorship relationships. And I can honestly say that there's many people who have done that for me, but I can honestly say that Dr. Jackson did that for me. He didn't want anything from my father. He didn't want anything from me, even though we obviously we helped each other out when appropriate. But he wasn't looking for anything from my father. Wasn't looking for anything from me. He just really wanted to inspire and instill values in me so that I could be the best person possible as I was matriculating in my studies and through school. So I just think that that's something that's very important in mentorship. I call it out every time I see it. Every time I see somebody charging for mentorship, I'm like, how are you charging for mentorship? You can't put a real price on genuine mentorship. And so it's just not a thing. And it's not to say that there aren't situations where it is appropriate for there to be expenses. Like if there's, I think that the only time you should really be charging for mentorship is if that mentorship is like if you need materials, you're paying for a trip or something like that, where you have to, it's a part of you being mentored where you need to get those. I think that that's okay. But if I'm paying you to mentor me, cat, fake. It's not genuine. And so he wasn't looking for anything from me. And so that selflessness is really what one of the things that he instilled in me. And so whenever I am mentoring someone, whether it's a doctoral student, whether it's a youth, I'm not looking for anything. I want them to not make the mistakes I made. I want them to genuinely be in a better position as a result of my mentorship than I was when I was in their position.
Final question for you. Kevin Harden Jr. occupies a different but equally powerful place in your story. As a peer, a brother in purpose, a same generation influence, how has the presence in your life shaped, how has his presence in your life shaped you in ways that elder mentorship alone could not?
No, and that's one of my best my good buddies. I'm inspired by him on a regular basis because he really showed also he's another person who showed me what's possible as well through hard work, through perseverance, because he's been through a lot and he's overcome a lot, but also just stayed on course and didn't compromise any of his values to be able to accomplish things. And so I'm blessed to have him as a peer and as a friend, because he's inspired me in so many different ways. Like I can remember, so he just recently started his own firm, for it's been over for a couple months now, but prior to that, just me seeing his trajectory from a law school student to where he was a law school student, then he's working at the DA's office, then next thing you know, he's working at a couple firms. Next thing you know, he's partnered the firm to to starting his own firm. He has a karate school. So just me being able to see him being able to accomplish all these various these things and these dreams, things that he never even like. He's had more success than he can even imagine, and or him or I can imagine, and yet he's still the same person. He's still a person who's investing in the community, whether it's small businesses. He's invested in scholarships to the next generation of lawyers. He's constantly mentoring lawyers, people who are especially Black and brown lawyers. And so me being able to see him, despite all his success, despite everything that he's accomplished, he can really just see you, bye. I'm out of here. He always makes sure that he stays true to himself and always extends that olive branch to others. And then even when there's been moments where I've needed advice from him, or ask him things that he's thought about, or just even if I'm not asking him about, just watching his journey. It's so inspiring for me. So that's definitely one of my close buddies, and somebody who daily inspires me on a regular basis to just want to accomplish more, but also just making sure that I'm staying true to myself and accomplishing it in an authentic manner. So that's definitely something that he really inspires me, and continues to do so to this day.
I've got a comment here in the chat that I would love for you to respond to if you can. Let me put it on the screen for you. It says, this is from Dr. Hector. He says, I see mentorship as a version of storytelling.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that because we all have our personal stories that in our personal journeys, and I think that our journeys, our personal experiences are always going to be something that informs our mentorship, and it's going to inform our leadership. And so I think that again, it goes to, if I see somebody is experiencing something that I've experienced and I'm mentoring them, I want to give them game to where if there's something that I would have done differently, I'm trying to give them game on that. Based on my experience. And I'm not trying to be manipulative about it or gatekeep about it as well. Give the full game. And that's something that even getting back to Kev, that's something that he very much stands for as well. He's like, give the full game. Like I should want you. It's not to say that you are going to have more success than me, but at the root, I should genuinely, if I'm mentoring you, I should genuinely have a belief and a desire to make sure that you are succeeding and you are better off than I was when I was in your shoes. So that's something that's very important, and that story is always going to inform your mentorship. So no, that's a very good comment.
So, do you have any words of wisdom and encouragement for our audience? Tell them how they can connect with you via your social media, how they can get your website, your book, any or all of those good things.
So connecting with me is very easy. You can either connect to me via LinkedIn. I was R. Vance Cooper Jr. You can connect with me via website. So it's vancecooper.com. That's primarily where people connect with me. You can just fill out an inquiry. I'd be glad to connect with you via my website or LinkedIn. Always looking to connect, always looking to do training, speaking. I do it all. It's what I'm passionate about. So very much looking to connect with people. One thing I will say is that just always remember that leadership is self-discovery. It's a self-discovery process. Nobody is ever going to know you better than you know yourself. And once you actually are discovering yourself and going through that self-discovery process, you're continuously wanting to refine yourself. There is no arrival at leadership. Leadership is something that you're just consistently moving towards. And so I want everybody to think at leadership as that. You should constantly, even if things are going well, you should constantly be looking for ways for you to better yourself, for you to be able to better serve your people, because ultimately leadership is about service. And with you, the more you know about yourself, the better capacity you have to be able to serve others. So just always remember that. And that hopefully that's something that you can take away from this conversation.
Well, so in closing, I want to thank each and every individual that's here, that has watched the entire show. And for those of you that are here that are always here to support us. And for those of you that are watching on our YouTube channels, especially, if you have not yet subscribed and enabled all notifications, I would definitely appreciate your support by doing so. And also, I want to say to you, Dr. Cooper, I'm about to close with the monologue. Do you have a couple of minutes here after I close the show?
Yes.
All right. So here we go in closing. What you just witnessed, this conversation, this exchange, this unguarded and generous offering of truth takes courage. And I want to begin by honoring Dr. Vance Cooper for choosing to show up tonight, not as a brand, not as a resume, not as a set of talking points, but a full, breathing, complex human being who happens to have also built an extraordinary life's work. That combination, the scholar and the man, the advocate and the son, the consultant and the community servant, is exactly what this show was built to celebrate and exactly what our times demand more of. Thank you, Dr. Cooper, for your presence, for your honesty, and for the gift of your life's example. Three things that stay with me from this conversation, and I think they will stay with you too if you allow them to. The first is the call to lead yourself first, not as a slogan, but as a daily, disciplined, sometimes humbling practice of turning inward before you turn outward. Every person in a position of influence, whether they lead a team of 2 or more or a company of 2,000, has a responsibility to do interior work first, not because it is uncomfortable, but because it is the only foundation upon which genuine, lasting leadership can be built. The second is the radical, necessary, long overdue truth that mental health and leadership excellence are not in tension. They are inseparable. A leader who is not well cannot lead well. That is not an indictment. It is an invitation to invest in your own wholeness with the same urgency and commitment you bring to every other aspect of your professional life. And the third thread is the one that runs through this entire episode and through the history that opened it. The power of mentorship, of brotherhood, of Black men choosing deliberately and courageously to lift each other. That is not a soft story. That is the infrastructure of our future. I want to speak for a moment from my own heart as the host of this show, and as a Black man who believes in the power of this kind of honest, culturally grounded conversation. American Black and White was built on the premise that our stories, the full, complicated, glorious, painful, triumphant stories of Black life in America, deserves a platform that treats them with gravity and the love they have always deserved. Tonight's conversation is exactly why this show exists. We live in a moment that is asking us loudly and urgently to produce leaders of uncommon quality, leaders who are not just smart or credentialed or charismatic, but who are whole, leaders who know themselves, who have done the work, who lead from a place of genuine clarity and compassion. Dr. Cooper's life and work is a blueprint for what that looks like. And I am grateful beyond measure that you were here tonight to witness it. Before we close, I want to speak directly to you. Yes, you, wherever you are watching this. I want to ask you to do 3 things before this week is over. First, check in with yourself. Not a performative check-in, but a real, quiet, honest sit-down with the interior life you have been too busy to visit. Ask yourself how you are really doing. Then, if the answer is anything other than thriving, give yourself permission to seek help without shame, without apology, and without the false notion that needing support makes you less than the leader you are. Second, find a mentor and be a mentor. Reach out to someone who has walked further down the road than you and ask to learn from them. And then turn around and do the same for someone coming behind you. That chain, that beautiful sacred chain of mentorship is how our community has always built the future. And the third, choose wholeness in your leadership, in your relationships, in your private life. Choose to show up as your full self, not the edited version that you believe the world can handle, but the real, complete, powerful person that you actually are. The world needs that version of you. We need that version of you. Tonight in America in Black and White, we were reminded that this country is exactly what our show's name says it is. Complex, layered, beautiful, unfinished, and full of the kind of stories that can change everything if we are willing to tell them and hear them honestly. We're not done building, we're not done becoming, and conversations like the one you witnessed tonight, grounded in truth, rooted in community, animated by love, are precisely how we build the future we deserve. I'm your host, Charles Zachary King. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for caring enough about this moment to show up for it. We will see you next time on America in Black and White. Good night to everyone, and please have a great evening.